Hey everybody, welcome to Hidden Hustle. This is part two of our look at preview of signing day. We're running the defense now. Jamie and Greg from Our Sports Daily. Um, we're going to kind of get into what we think. Well, I'll speak for myself. I think this is um, maybe the best defensive class Notre Dame has signed 15 years. I don't know. It's been a long time. It's definitely better than anyone that Brian Kelly signed during his tenure. When if I'm looking at from top to bottom, all three levels of the defense. I mean, I think they didn't close out with some of the guys that they wanted to close out with, and obviously they want to close out and keep Devin Moore in the class, and we'll get into more of that later. But I think from top to bottom, still, this is a really deep, talented class with several guys who have a chance to be impact players.
I mean, you're looking at the linebackers. I mean, you're going back to like 1995 with Corey Minor and Jimmy Friday and Bobby Howard.
Yeah, it really is that kind of level.
Because Corey Minor was the USA player of the year, USA Today player of the year on defense, and like Jalen Snead is that level. I mean, he is tremendous, and not just on a not just as a defender, right? Like he did it on offense too, and it was a lot of like I don't want to say it because he was such a great player, but like there's like Jalen flashbacks of just like the way that Jalen Snead is playing on offense, where he's the wildcat quarterback and he's running it in all the time. And I know Jalen played a lot of offense too. So you have that level of player just right on top, right? And then you get Josh Burnham, who is, in my opinion, he's a top 100 player. And then you get Junior Tulialamaka, and he's in there as well. Nolan Ziegler, elite. I don't want to say elite. He's a strong athlete at the rover position and he's got a bunch of size. All these guys are very big, physical players, fast players. And then you look at the defensive line with Tyson Ford, Aiden Gabera, and then you look in the secondary too. They're just getting the type of caliber athletes that they haven't had in previous classes. And so like it lends credence to what you said, like one of the best classes they've had in a really long time.
And the linebackers, will start there because that is the strength of the group. It's really like just next level. And we'll start with Nolan Ziegler, who you mentioned, and he was the first commit out of that group. And another guy too. I think when you commit early, he's deep Notre Dame legacy, a guy who people forget about. Meanwhile, he's just destroying the state of Michigan as a senior. Just a phenomenal senior season, big time impact, two ways. A rover, like a guy who's built like a safety now, but I mean, he's tall and long and going to put on that weight and going to be able to play linebacker. And I think he's probably going to stay out as a rover, maybe move inside. But the guy is similar to, in my opinion, is at least when he first came in, was Drew Tranquil, right? Yeah. A guy who was a really good athlete. Drew Tranquil played running back a lot in high school. So a really good running back, safety on defense. Ziegler plays a little bit of safety, a little bit of like space backer. I think he's someone, if this was a different class, if this was a regular linebacker class, people would be hyping up Ziegler a lot more. He's just a really good perimeter tackler, good speed, just great instincts. I think really the only issue is it could be a crowded depth chart and crowded linebacker room. Right. So how's he going to fit? Is he going to be able to jump over guys? Who knows when he gets there? But I think he's a really, really good football player, and someone that in a different class would be celebrated a lot more.
Yeah, and I love his I love the offensive clips from him because it just shows the athletic ability. And I love guys who know how to play the game on both sides of the ball because it just shows like football instincts and it shows football IQ, and that translates like all over the field. You know, and I this is something that I kind of harped on with Kyron too, is like I feel like you watch Kyron's highlight tape as a senior in high school, and he's playing safety, and it's like he looks like he could be a safety, and he's not because of his physical dimensions and that sort of thing. But you can just see that he knows how to play football, and I think Nolan Ziegler fits into that as well. And you know, I'm struck at just how big he is. Every time I see a photo of him, you know, you see a photo of him and it's just him standing there. It's like, okay, like, you know, he looks like a football player, right? Looks like a linebacker should. And then you see him standing next to somebody else and it's like, whoa,
Yeah, he's
like
tall.
this guy is big. And you know he's going to fill out, and you know that that's just that athleticism is just going to get, you know, better and better. And like you said, if he wasn't also in the class with Josh Burnham and Jalen Snead and Junior Tuihalamaka, like you would think, okay, he's going to grow into like a Will or something like that. But it's like, no, they don't have to do that. They can bulk him up to play on the perimeter at Rover, you know, someone the size of like Isaiah Pryor or someone the size of Jack Heiser, maybe a little bit bigger than them, right? And but with similar athleticism. And that's obviously like we've seen those guys have success. And now Ziegler's coming in. It's like, hey, this is your spot, right? This is someone that the staff picked out, that they said this is a guy who can play this position, and he's the one who's, you know, the lowest rated of the group. And if he's the lowest rated of the group, like that, you know, like you have a really good class coming in.
Definitely. And it, you know, Junior Tuihalamaka, you mentioned, out of California, was a USC commit. Notre Dame flipped him, you know, or he decommitted and then eventually flipped to Notre Dame. You know, someone who is a little bit of a throwback type of Mike linebacker. He's going to play he's definitely going to be a Mike linebacker.
Yeah.
You know, I see him as a 2-down player, a very high level 2-down player, but just a 2-down player. What do you think of Tuihalamaka's game?
So similar, right? But it's one of those things where you think, okay, 2-down player, right? So he's limited, but necessary too, because you're going to play teams the way Notre Dame schedules. Like you're going to play teams that are physical like that. And if you are going to, and not just that, but if you are going to play teams that are like, let's say they're playing USC now, right? And now they have Lincoln Riley. So Lincoln Riley likes to run the ball. So if you have Lincoln Riley and he likes to run the ball, then you need someone in the box who is a thumper, who can actually hold his own when you don't have the 4 down maybe in front of you. It's like he can battle with guards and he can battle with centers and that sort of thing. You can't have just undersized guys in there, because if you do, you just get run over. And that's his value, is where it's like he's a good enough athlete to where if he is out there and teams are throwing, like he can hold his own. And if we know they're throwing, then maybe we'll put someone else out there, right? So maybe it would be, you know, Josh Burnham and Jalen Snead out there instead, right? Just those 2 guys. But if it's a base situation, you know, you can put him in there. You know, he's going to thump. He's a good enough athlete to cover backs if he needs to. I mean, he's no worse of an athlete than Drew White is, and Drew White is out there and he's playing really good football. So yeah, just super excited about his potential. And you need a guy who is able to hold his own inside as like a big, you know, thumper type player.
Yeah, I think, you know, he has the potential to be an elite inside run defender.
Yeah.
And great instincts, super physical downhill player, a guy who's going to be physically ready to compete early in his career. And if he's utilizing the correct, good blitzer too, a guy who's using the right role, I mean, he could really shine and be great. And I think he's a little bit, you know, not the fastest top end speed guy, a little bit tight hipped. And saying that, Tavon Coney, that's how you would describe Tavon Coney.
Yeah.
And he was an elite inside run defender. And I think the two guys that I just compared, Uyeyama and Ziegler to, were arguably the best duo of the last 10 years. The guys who played together,
Right.
Coney and Tranquil. So that gives you an idea of how good this linebacker group is, when those are the guys who are like, yeah, we're excited about them, but they're really excited about Snead and Burnham. And we'll go Snead first. You know, someone who was, obviously a very coveted guy for a long time, really risen up. 5-star ranking at some place. I think he's a top 50 guy, definitely in the country. Insane that this guy went from playing linebacker to being a 3-point stance as a junior, and then all of a sudden he's playing like free safety basically as a senior, but doesn't look out of place as a free safety because the guy is a freak. He can run. He's just got crazy speed, great lateral agility, kind of a bigger JOK, really, right? Like that kind of, I would say my one knock on him is, JOK, I think, is a little bit more instinctive, and I think he's a little bit more reactive, but just his reaction is, he's just such a great athlete that he can make up for it. And so once the recognition comes and once he kind of gets that time, I think he has a chance to be really, really special, especially as an outside blitzer. So I think he's going to start out at Rover, which him and Ziegler will probably both be there. And then I imagine, because I think when I watch him, and it's similar to Prince Colley, who's a freshman right now in Notre Dame, where, that transition to Will is, you could see it's a little bit tough for him because he wasn't used to be playing inside the box, having to take on guards, do it, all these other things. It's just a different view when you're inside the box, off the ball, compared to when you're playing in space. And so Snead, I think there will be a bit of a transition for that, but at the same time, he might just stick at Rover the whole time and be an All-American there. He's that special.
Yeah. And, I talked about Snead earlier. So I'm just like, but between him and Burnham, I feel like those two guys that's what Georgia has. Yeah. Georgia has those guys out there covering in the slot, covering tight ends, flying around in the backfield all the time, creating havoc. Like you're always tracking havoc plays. Like those guys are, to me, what Notre Dame has always not had with someone like Kyle Hamilton. Yeah. And like, that's what you need. You need to put these guys all on the same field at the same time. And that's what they are. Like
they've had a JOK, but never a Jalen Smith on the same team. Right. They've never been able to put all of that together. They haven't had the Roquan Smith. Yeah.
Right. It's like you want stacks of those guys at every level. And I think those two guys in the middle are that. And to say I'm excited, I just compared them to Georgia players, right? So just to say I'm excited about them is understated. I just feel like they are the building blocks to an elite defense. And we're talking about, this year our defense is, I think right now, is 13th SP plus, right? Which is good, and it's a little bit higher than it's been in the last 2 years. I'm talking about like top 5.
I think that's what's been missing, right? Is Notre Dame has really had really good defenses, and they've had I think the average under Clark Lee, they finished with 16th, right? Yeah. You're top 16 in the nation. You have really, really good defenses. Yeah. But there's a difference between that top 5. There's a drop, right? And Notre Dame has just kind of been missing there. And you do that. And I really don't think it's not coaching that needs to be there. And you see how hard the guys play, and there's, the culture is obviously there. It's just overall top end talent at all 3 levels. And so I think that's a perfect way to put it with these guys too, is that they bring that kind of top end talent there. And Burnham, man, I really think he has a chance to be a sensational player, one of the best linebackers in college football. There's just not a lot of guys like him who have his measurables, or 6'4". Yeah, he's a guy who could be 6'4", 250 and still run like a gazelle. And I think he has a chance to be a multi-year starter. Same with Jalen Snead as well. I mean, all of these guys really have that kind of potential, but I just think he has, up there where all of a sudden you could say, man, this guy's going to be a first round player, right? He's going to be a linebacker that's get taken in the first round. And incredible to kind of see some of the stuff he does just by being an athlete at linebacker, and then maybe even grow into a Viper, because he has some of those measurables, but the guy plays quarterback on offense and has to like run the ball all the time.
Yeah.
And yet still triple digits season tackles on the season and stuff like that to me is incredible. So I'm excited to see when he kind of gets to concentrate on, just playing linebacker and develop there, because I think he could just get taken up to another level. And really and we'll finish with DBs. We'll go to D-line next, but we can start with Tyson Ford. And Tyson Ford, to me, I like the sophomore film a lot. Saw a lot of good things there. To me, his junior film was a little bit up and down. So good flashes. Wasn't, wanted to see a little bit more consistent twitch. And to me, I saw that as a senior. He was just way more violent off the ball, quicker, twitchier, better motor. I mean, to me, he looked like this is the kind of guy that could be a big time player and, a Khalid Kareem-esque type 5 technique for Notre Dame.
Right.
And someone who could also line up and rush from a 3-tech spot too. And I think, when I mentioned about his senior film too, that's a common theme with almost all these guys is that, and that hasn't always been the thing with Notre Dame commits is, sometimes there's always 1 or 2 guys in the class. You're like, man, that senior film, they didn't take that jump that I wanted to, but he really did take that jump that I was hoping to see from him.
And it's not surprising given the COVID, right? So a lot of their junior years are the COVID year, and that was a weird time for everyone. I do feel the same way, and I think that it's kind of reflected in his rankings. Like preseason going into his senior year, that he was kind of like steadily dropping a little bit, and then it is leveled out, right? Like he's stabilized at where he is as a top 150 guy, just in the composite. And so it's like, okay, it's like you said, it's like his sophomore year was one way, his junior year was another one, and then like you said, let's bounce back, right? And you say that with like a lot of guys, and I thought it going like with a bunch of players, because of the like Tai Chan or something like that, right? It's like you just want to see what their senior year is going to look like, or Amorian Walker. That's probably a better example. It's like Amorian Walker. It's like he didn't have a ton of games, got hurt, and it's like, okay, let's see what the senior year looks like. And so the same way with Tyson Ford, and like you said, okay, he took the next step. You can see where the development is going, and then you plug him into the defense. It's like, okay, I could see him being an MTA type, or I could see him being a Khalid Kareem type, or someone on the strong side, opposite side of the Viper. So excited about him as a high floor guy, like, you're going to get solid play. Like, I feel like Khalid Kareem was a high floor player, and the ceiling got higher and higher as his career went on, but he was always, if nothing else, like a steady player you could count on to give you good reps when you needed them.
I would agree with that. And Aiden Gobera too. I think Aiden Gobera's got a high floor too. And I think anyone you can see a guy who physically, has the body where they can, develop into something, and then they have the first step in the motor. Those guys hit a lot. Like you don't see too many misses there. And Gobera, to me, great first step, awesome motor, can turn the corner. Is someone who probably, when he got offered, and it was based off his sophomore film, he was a skinny kid, and you could see the potential, but also that this guy had a lot of physical development too. And then, wow, did he make that big jump as a junior? Mm-hmm. And I'm just like floored that this guy isn't ranked as a top 100 kid all over the place, because I think he really is that. And I think just watch his film and how like devastating he can be. Obviously, sometimes, it's another situation where sometimes the comp isn't the greatest and he's just destroying a kid. But that's what you want to see from a guy like that. You want to see him destroy those guys. And I think he has a chance to be a great, great pass rusher. Just super, already shows some good counters and ability to kind of bend the corner. But I think once he kind of gets into Notre Dame and is able to really kind of refine his craft, I think he could be, an absolutely elite pass rusher.
I feel like once he gets bigger, he's going to be just a monster. Like I feel like he got really tall. He had a big growth spurt and his body just hasn't caught up with him yet. But he's, like you say, he's already showing those traits. He's already showing that ability to, turn the corner. He's already showing, like you said, he has counters, right? And it's one thing to be a great athlete. It's another thing to be a great athlete and then a good football player on top of that. And it just, once he gets some weight on him, some muscle on him, he's just going to be a freaking monster. And he projects as Viper. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think that's where he's probably going to play. Could maybe end up seeing the strong side, but I think be based on kind of how the class went shaped up, he'll probably start at Viper.
Yeah. And so maybe he's one of these guys where it's like, for us, it's easy to see him as a top 100 player because we know the scheme and we know how they're going to use him, and we know like how he fits. And maybe for, I don't know, the services, it's like, oh, we just see the rawness, or we just see it's hard for us to project him.
I'm sure that I'm not even sure. I'm like 100% positive they're not looking at scheme fit or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like these guys. And that's one of the reasons why, subscribe to Irish Sports Daily, guys.
Right.
That's what you're going to do. You got to be able to see.
It's all context.
Well, we view it from a Notre Dame lens, and we know what they run and who's going to fit and how they're going to fit at Notre Dame and all these other factors. And I think that kind of stuff matters, right? And which is why, too, one of the reasons why I was one of the only guys who had a 4-star grade on Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, because he was a tweener, but not a Notre Dame scheme. He was a rover, and he was a perfect fit there, and he ended up being the perfect fit and obviously won the Buckus. Lastly on the defensive line, I think they wanted to sign maybe another interior guy. It didn't work out. They signed, about to sign Donovan Heinisch. I would say as much as a lock of anyone. Kurt's younger brother. Not big, not the biggest guy. Definitely going to need to add weight, get stronger. Walking into a much different situation than Kurt walked into, where he was kind of forced to play before he was ready. That's not going to happen with Donovan. He's going to have time to kind of build up his body and all that. Similar mindset to Kurt. I would say he not as advanced hands, but more Howard Cross than Kurt. I would think overall, but still going to be kind of like an undersized nose guard. I'm worried about if he'll be big enough, but then again, Howard Cross isn't the biggest guy, and he's pretty effective. So I don't know. What is your take about him? I see him as someone who's probably, I think in a couple of years he could be in the rotation. But to me, everything hinges on his physical development.
Yeah. And I think, is it safe to say that if Bayless doesn't sign off, then it's not happening?
I don't know if it's that, but I mean, they would have to think that he can be able to develop. If not, would be, well, put it this way too. There's no way they take Donovan if they didn't already have Kurt, and Kurt worked out like he did. Right.
Yeah. So you know what you're getting from a mindset standpoint, from a work ethic standpoint. So
you know what you're getting from a program guy. The guy is going to be great for the program. And, is he going to be a 3-year starter like Kurt? I would say probably unlikely, but not because of anything other than he's in a much different situation than Kurt.
Right. And it just like I feel like Kurt was bigger just naturally.
He was bigger, but definitely too. Like if you look at Kurt before his senior year, especially, I mean, I read a Nike camp, like he was tiny, like he was not even close to. He worked really, really hard to put on the weight, and
So I would just say, like, you count on the genes, right? You count on the Heinisch genes, and that's what this is. You know, and it's almost like when we look at the coaching staff, right? Like I remember when Tommy Rees was hired as the OC, and it was like, I don't know, like what other school would do this? It's like, I don't know, but he fits here. And it's kind of like with Donovan. It's like, you know, would another school take him? Would another top level school take him? It's like, I don't know, but
it doesn't matter if it works at this school.
He's at our school, and we know what we're getting here, and he can work for us. He doesn't have to work for Clemson. He needs to work for us. And so that's kind of how I feel.
And those hires happen all the time, everywhere. Right. And, you know, and sometimes they don't work out because it's whatever, but sometimes they do work out, like Tommy Rees, right? Yeah. Like incredible how the views of Tommy Rees have changed over the last couple of years for many people, right? You know.
So I'm not willing to bet against Donovan being a productive player for Notre Dame.
No, I certainly wouldn't bet against him or anyone in that family for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and I'm certain that once he starts playing for Notre Dame, he'll be one of those guys who's like a favorite of many Notre Dame fans. They'll just, you know, love this guy, a guy who's, you know, much like his brother, just a guy that you see out there and you see him just like give every single ounce of everything into every rep, and everyone's got to appreciate that. On at defensive back, you know, things could look a lot different if you know, depending on they you know, they struck out on Xavier Nwaka, you know, tough break. Obviously, the kid wanted to stay home, right? That would have helped obviously a lot at safety. So without him, they're probably not going to take a safety, someone who's projected, who's going to come in, start at safety at least. So they're bringing in 3 corners or 4 corners. You know, Benjamin Morrison, Jaden Mickey, Jaden Bellamy, and then Devin Moore, if they can, you know, it's between them and Florida right now, right? If they're able to get him back in the class. Let's start with Moore. And I know, you know, we don't know if he's going to be in the class or not, but I think it's important to talk about him because I think he really is key. And we talked about this off the air, but I think he's the key to this all because he's the guy, and not that the other 3 aren't good prospects, they are, but Moore is the one that I think could be the next level prospect out of them, as a guy who could play boundary corner or safety and do it at a really high level.
He's like Bobby Taylor to me. You know, like when I think of Notre Dame recruiting, I always think of like, it's never the guys that they get, right? If you take more out of the class and we just talk about the 3 guys, these are good football players. And you know, I don't feel bad about any of them, but you want Devin Moore in the class because that's the type of guy who it's like you said, we could stick him at safety. And I think it could be a really good safety for Notre Dame. I think we could stick him on a boundary, and I think he would be a great boundary corner, right? Like we're going to talk about Benjamin Morrison and Jaden Mickey and the strengths that they have. And I think that Devin Moore is a combination of both of those things. And that's what you always want. And so, you know, I think it's 50-50 right now with him. And hopefully, you know, it breaks Notre Dame's way because he really kind of brings it all together in the secondary. He's a physical player. He has good transitions. He can turn and run. He's returning kickoffs for touchdowns, so he has that long speed. He's an aggressive tackler. He's good in press. He's good in off. He's good at reading the field. He's good at reading the quarterback from the safety position. Just tons of talent, just oozing talent. So, hopefully that turns out well for Notre Dame.
And he was bumped up. Incredible that he was a 3-star
Yeah.
for so long. Almost would compare it to Kyle Hamilton and the fact that he was so underrated.
Yeah.
And I really think he's an extremely high level prospect. And for all those things that you mentioned too, that he can play all these different ways and win in so many different ways in coverage. And I think he can do something that not a lot of corners or defensive backs in general can do. He can make plays in phase.
Yeah.
Right. And he shows just super high football intelligence. You could just see it when you watch it on the film, and just the instincts and the recognition. And I thought he improved a lot technically with his transitions, and looked smoother to me as a senior. So that's a big one. It's definitely a big one. These guys super important too, and I think could be really good. And we started off by saying Moore obviously could be special, but these guys I think can all be high level starters. And transition to Benjamin Morrison, right, a corner out of Arizona. Washington offered Jimmy Lake. One thing you could say, maybe not a great head coach, didn't work out very well. Terrific evaluator and developer of defensive backs, really knows what to do. So you beat Washington for him. To me, especially at a kid out west, that's a check. Sign of approval right there. I thought really looked faster as a senior. Always a guy who could come up and bang as a tackler too. I think he's a field corner. I think he's got really good instincts. I think he isn't maybe the twitchiest guy. He's pretty twitchy, but he's not like just that elite level, but he makes up for it because he reads the play so well.
Yeah. And
I'm a big fan of his.
He moves around like Cam Hart. When I was watching him, I thought he moves a lot like Cam does. And I think the world of Cam. So I liked his, like you said, his physical play. I liked his burst. He's really good at when he's playing his zone. He can play multiple zones kind of at the same time. So he can cover short, and he can make the quarterback think he's got the short route. And then when the quarterback tries to throw over the top of him, he can get there and make a play on it. There's a play in his film where he's covering the player who gets a jet sweep, and he tracks all the way across the field and makes the tackle almost for loss, right? Like, so he makes a hit in the backfield, and then the running back kind of lunges, or the receiver lunges for like back to the line of scrimmage. Right. And that's just like unheard of, right? You will not see that, in like a football game or anywhere, but
at any level, really.
Right. Yeah. Right. And the fact that he even thought, like, I'm going to chase this down, I'm going to make the play, like that shows
no one even tries that. Yeah.
Right. Like the level of confidence that he has in his ability. And so he plays with a ton of confidence. He great size, the type of size that you want, right? Clarence Lewis, shorter corner, Troy Pride, little bit shorter corner, Julian Love, shorter corner, like Cam Hart, Benjamin Morrison, like these are the type of corners that you want, like the size that you want out there, physically imposing. So I think a lot of him. I think a lot of his game.
I am going to actually correct you on one thing though, because I have seen that at the college level. I've seen Jalen Smith, Pitt ran a toss to the opposite side. He ran it down from the opposite side for a tackle for loss.
Yeah.
Blazed right by Joe Schmidt, poor Joe Schmidt.
That's right. Yes.
Obviously played a lot of football for Notre Dame, made a lot of tackles.
Jalen Smith did it.
Jalen Smith, it was a different. Jalen Smith might be the only guy else who I've seen that kind of from. And obviously he did that against Pitt. It was, that was one of my favorite plays I ever remembered. Actually, it was just a fantastic play. But that just shows you how unique that kind of play is. So you heard it here first, right? Benjamin Morrison, Jalen Smith, right? So, Jaden Bellamy is another guy, same school as Steve Angeli, the quarterback commit, plays in really good level ball in New Jersey. I think he's a really, really good football player. Like, makes a ton of plays in the football. A guy who's not afraid to come up and tackle, plays much more physical than his size. The big question with me is he needs to get bigger and stronger, and it's just an absolute must in order to be able to play at the level that he would need to be able to excel at Notre Dame. And the guy I comped him with is Trey Norwood at Oklahoma, who was another kid that Notre Dame had offered, late. I believe it was the 2017 cycle. Offered him late. Who was a really, really good football player, super instinctive, super skinny. Definitely need to physically develop. That happened for him. The guy's playing in the NFL now. He's been making plays for the Steelers. Like he's a good player. So that can happen. And I mean, it's happened at Cincinnati. Ahmad Gardner was like 135 pounds when he signed with Cincinnati. Obviously, you look at him now, the guy's going to be a high first round pick, right? So that needs to happen. But to me, all the kind of stuff needs to happen for him to he needs to get bigger, stronger, faster, all these things. But football player, he's a good football player. But in order to be a really good football player at the Notre Dame level, all those things, bigger, stronger, faster, that has to happen.
Yeah. I see his skill set as like kind of like a swing player. Someone who like Ramon Henderson prior to Kyle getting hurt. So in the dime packages, Ramon Henderson was playing like deep middle, and then he would play some in the slot. So he would cover the slot, then he'd play some at corner, then he would play deep middle and in the safety position in the dime defense. And I think that Bellamy, like you say, he's a good enough player, and he's played both those positions in high school to where it's like, he has the instincts and he can find the ball. You want him out there in multiple positions, but like, do I see him as like, this is our boundary or this is our field corner? Like, I don't know if I ever see that because of what you say. Like, is he physically there? It's almost like Sean Crawford in 2019. He's not as small as Crawford, but
Crawford is always better as a sub package guy than he was. So
it's like, get him out there like 25 snaps a game, right? And he's got like, for the fact that Crawford was a sub package player, his production was through the roof. And that's the kind of player you need, right? Like, you were going to get him out there and he's going to make plays and he's going to find a way to be around the ball. And I see Bellamy that way. Not just the size, but I feel like if he was faster, it would be, I could see it a little bit more. And maybe it's just like the film I'm seeing is just not really showing it. I know when he signed or when he committed, everyone was talking about how fast he was. That didn't really pop for me when I watched it on film, but and I'm not saying he's slow. I'm just saying, like, I don't see the elite speed.
It's not jumping off the film.
Yeah, it's not jumping off. So, for him to be like a frontline player, he'll probably need to show that, but definitely like in sub packages, I can totally see him being very useful for Notre Dame.
So lastly is Jaden Mickey, who's someone I think he's going to play in sub packages early in his career. I love Jaden Mickey as a football player. My questions on him are size and measurables, and that's it. Because I think he's got, the high level change of direction. He's got big time instincts. He has an understanding of how to play press with his feet. That's advanced for someone his age. I think he can play in the nickel. I think he even though he's field corner, you would say field corner size, a guy who can play off, could play in the boundary because his instincts are so good, and could be a guy who all of a sudden blitzing off the edge because he just has this innate understanding of like timing and all that. And the guy he reminded me of, from a Notre Dame perspective, really it's Julian Love, really. And obviously if he's 3/4 of Julian Love, that's a heck of a player. But the guy who reminded me of just size-wise and also the instincts was Elijah Molden from the University of Washington, who was an outstanding player and a great slot corner. And I think Mickey has a chance to be that. And especially if Marcus Freeman wants to, and depending, we'll see what they do with defensive coordinator and all that too. But if the idea is to go to more of a nickel defense, to be maybe not base, but play it more regularly. Obviously, they play it on third down now, and they play nickel and dime there. But if they're going to be able to do that and kind of match that more often, Mickey is an ideal guy to kind of play there. And I just, I really, really couldn't be a bigger fan of his game.
Yeah, ultra competitive. That's what I like. Kind of jumps to me is like he plays with purpose. I am going to make this play. I hope they throw it to me. Kind of like you could just see it. It oozes out of his body language. He's the diagnosis of like a quick play. You try to run a quick screen to his side and he is going to blow it up because he's going to read it and he's going to go now. And he plays with great urgency. He's really good at flipping his hips. Like he'll be in bail. He'll be playing bail technique on a wide receiver, and that wide receiver will run like a deep out, and he will be able to break back, cross his hips, and make a play on the out route, which you don't expect as a defensive coordinator. You are giving that up because of the bail technique, right?
Yeah.
When you're playing bail, it's like, hey, if they throw a deep out, we're gonna have to give that up. He can get to that just by flipping his hips and going. Great burst out of his break. Like his long speed. Yeah, I saw him running track, and he looks stiff. He looked like a guy. It's like he's never run track before, basically.
Yeah.
Which is fine, right? But when I see him play, his burst for the first kind of 10 steps, or not 10 steps, the first 2-3 steps there is just like he can get out. He can get out and go.
He has a suddenness.
Yeah, he has a suddenness to his game. And so, like, to me, it's like I don't worry about the long speed because the rest of it is there and it's good. And like you said, I could see him playing early because of the competitor he is, because of the competition that he's played. He plays in one of the best leagues in California. So he's ready to go right now.
And I think what you said that describing that Bale and him making plays on that deep out, like, to me, that's the perfect description of him and why I think it's appropriate. You could even compare him to Julian Love, because what made Julian Love great was that the quote unquote free access throws, they were never free access with him.
Yeah.
And that's why he had so many pass breakups, like, getting like 20 pass breakups in a season, is because he knew, and it was, whether it was from preparation and film study, all this kind of stuff, or it's just natural instincts. He just had it where he knew, and he was so competitive with it, and that's what made him great at that, and made him a great college football corner. And even though he didn't have anywhere close to great speed, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't a burner. So, I think Mickey has a chance to be a really, really good player. And I mean, and as we go through, and we're done now talking about the commits, I think is when you go through it, it becomes even more clear. It sounds like we're just gushing over these guys. They're so good, but it really is that impressive of a class.
It's a great class.
Yeah. And I think, easily this is the best class that they brought in since 2013. And I would say it has more high-end potential than 2013. Obviously, that 2013 class, there was, McGlinchey and Fuller end up being first-round picks. Jalen Smith should have been a first-round pick. But I think when you look at where, I think only 4 or 5, I think maybe 5 guys got drafted from that, which is, when you think about a class of ranked 5th overall, that's not a lot. Like the 2016 class got, I think, 10 guys drafted, right? And that is obviously exceptional. But I really think there's, I wouldn't surprise me at all if he said, 4 or 5 years from now, 10 guys from this class got drafted. Wouldn't shock me at all. I think the class can be that good. All right. Well, I mean, we went over the offense yesterday, defense today. Now we just got to wait and see what happens with CJ Williams, what happens with Devin Moore. When you see this, CJ Williams might have already decommitted. Devin Moore might have already made his choice. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens. But I really think this is a great class, and Notre Dame fans should be excited about it. Obviously, we might see them add more after this initial signing period, but we got to see how it all plays out. Thanks everyone for watching. Just a reminder, Irish Sports Daily, right now there's an offer, $1 for your first week when you sign up. Ton of great content right now, ton of stuff with the bowl, ton of stuff with the early signing period. So, we got, Matt Freeman and Chris McCollum who are all over that stuff. We got the man, John Bryce, who's all over the beat and stuff doing that too. Obviously, if you're aware of Irish Sports Daily, you're aware of, our publisher, Mike Frank, who the godfather of Notre Dame media, just always, plugged in there. So I think it's really worth it for people if you're worth checking out. Thanks a lot for watching today. And we'll talk to you after signing day.